You know that 25-year-old on your feed who retired from dropshipping and now films podcasts from a rented Lambo? That's the story the internet keeps shoving in your face. But here's the part they never show you. In the real world, the average American millionaire is about 61 years old. Not 26, not crypto rich at 19, 61. Federal Reserve-based analyses show that households in their late 50s and early 60s now average around $1.4 to $1.6 million of net worth. It took them decades to get there. Not a summer, not one viral trade. So if the typical millionaire is basically your parents' age, what are they quietly doing for 30 years that TikTok never tells you about? This video is not about lottery winners, founders on magazine covers, or six figures in 6 months. This is the Quiet Millionaire Playbook. How completely normal people use boring systems, a margin of safety, and the slow power of compounding to end up rich while still living lives that look, from the outside, totally normal.
So let's zoom out from the social media fantasy and look at what real, data-backed millionaires actually do for decades. Most millionaires are not tech founders or influencers. They're teachers, engineers, nurses, mid-level managers, small business owners. They spend 20, 30 years doing the same boring thing over and over, earning an income, living below it, and buying assets that quietly grow in the background. When analysts run the numbers, they find something our instant gratification brains hate. If you invest money into a broad stock market index and earn around 8 to 10% a year over the long term, becoming a millionaire is mostly about time and consistency, not genius. One common example, at about a 10% return, investing roughly $450 a month for 30 years can get you to around $1 million. Invest closer to $265 a month, and you're looking at roughly 35 years to hit 7 figures. At an 8% return, putting in $500 a month takes about 35 years to cross $1 million. You can find calculators and charts that all tell some version of the same story. The longer you stay in the game, the more the math tilts in your favor. On paper, the Quiet Millionaire Playbook looks almost insultingly simple. Stay invested for decades. Keep buying assets on a schedule, no matter how you feel. Refuse to blow yourself up with one stupid decision. There's no cinematic montage in that story, but there is a very real moment, 25 or 30 years in, where someone logs into their account and realizes their net worth has quietly crossed 7 figures.
But to really understand why this boring pattern works, you have to see how time and compounding quietly supercharge it. Compounding is just your money earning money, and then that money also starts earning. In the early years, it feels like absolutely nothing is happening. You invest month after month, and your account barely moves compared to the effort and sacrifice. Run the math anyway. At a 10% long-term return, a schedule like $1,000 a month for about 27 years can grow to roughly $1 million. Over those years, you might contribute a bit more than $300,000 of your own money. The rest, the majority of that million, is growth. The part that only shows up because you stayed invested and let time work. Even at a more modest 8% return, $500 a month hits about $1 million in roughly 35 years. If all you can manage is $200 or $300 a month right now, your timeline stretches closer to 35, 40 years. But the principle doesn't change. The earlier you start and the more you can push that monthly number, the more time and compounding do the heavy lifting for you. The problem is, compounding only pays people who can tolerate long, boring stretches where nothing feels impressive. Our culture is training you to do the exact opposite, to chase what's loud, what's fast, what promises a shortcut. Quiet millionaires don't win because they found a secret market or a perfect stock. They win because, for 20 or 30 years, they kept showing up for this boring, invisible process, while everyone else kept getting distracted.
Of course, none of that matters if one bad decision wipes out years of compounding, which is where margin of safety comes in. If compounding is the engine, margin of safety is the seatbelt. In the real world, most people don't fail to build wealth because they never see a 50% return. They fail because they keep blowing up whatever progress they had. Credit card balances at 20% interest, lifestyle creep that eats every raise, panic selling during crashes,
or all-in bets that wipe out years of savings. Look at the wealth data. In the U.S., Pew Research estimates the typical upper-income household has a median net worth around $803,000, while the typical middle-income household sits near $204,000 and lower-income households around $24,500. Same country, same stock market, same housing market, very different outcomes. A big part of that gap is margin of safety. Middle and upper-income households who actually build wealth tend to own things that can survive shocks: retirement accounts, home equity, diversified portfolios. When a recession hits or a job is lost, they might be stressed, but they're not forced to liquidate everything at the worst possible moment. Quiet millionaires quietly protect themselves by keeping 3 to 6 months of expenses in cash so a layoff doesn't become a credit card spiral, not maxing out every mortgage or car loan the bank offers just because they qualify, assuming investment returns will be lumpy and sometimes disappointing, then building a plan that still works. It doesn't look impressive on Instagram, but every time they avoid a big mistake, they're protecting 5, 10, 20 years of compounding. Defense doesn't make headlines, but it's the reason their net worth graph keeps climbing when others keep resetting to zero.
And when you turn all of this into everyday behavior, the Quiet Millionaire Playbook shrinks down into just a few boring rules you can actually follow. Rule 1. Pay yourself first. Before rent, before restaurants, before anything, 15 to 25% of your take-home pay goes into diversified funds automatically. You don't wait to see what's left. The system moves the money before your brain can talk you out of it. Rule 2. Build and protect your margin of safety. Keep that 3 to 6 months of emergency fund. Say no to high-interest debt, even if it means driving an older car, or saying no when your friends upgrade their lifestyle. Rule 3. Every raise is an opportunity, not a shopping spree. When your income jumps, freeze your lifestyle for 6 to 12 months and increase your investing instead. That's how a normal salary over 20-30 years quietly turns into serious net worth. And the data backs this up. Average net worth in your 20s is relatively low. Empower estimates around 130 to 140K on average, with a much lower median, but it rises sharply with age. By the time people hit their 50s and 60s, average net worth often sits between $1.3 and $1.7 million, making these the wealthiest decades of life. That's not an accident. That's decades of boring systems, compounding, and avoiding blowups finally showing on paper. So the real question is not, can you be a millionaire by 30? It's, can you build a boring system, protect it, and let it run long enough that one day your net worth quietly passes 7 figures while your life still looks normal? Because that's how normal people actually build wealth. If you want more evidence-based videos like this to guide your money decisions, hit subscribe and stay tuned. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.